Okay, we're going to go over the Azorius cards now, starting with Ascended Law Mage. For 2 colorless, a blue and a white, you get a 3/2 flying hexproof. 4 mana for a 3 power flyer has always been really solid in Limited, and this has hexproof on top of that. So, it's like a step up from Assault Griffin. I can see this being a pretty solid card. I'd give it, I guess, a 3. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's basically the same. In limited, it's for the most part, it's basically the same as Assault Griffin.
Yeah.
And granted, Hexproof every once in a while is going to matter, but I hate the mechanic and kind of build your own dragon sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it works a lot better with Hexproof, but at the end of the day, I don't find it actually that much better than Assault Griffin. So I'd probably actually give it a 2.5.
I mean, I think it's like a slight bit better, which is why I gave it the 3. But I mean, my thinking was that Assault Griffin was not that exciting in Gatecrash, and Gatecrash was quite fast. I think the format being a little slower, a 3 power flyer will be pretty solid. But I guess it's awkward just because it trades with the 2/2 flyer, and you just don't want to do that.
Right.
So Council of the Absolute, for 2 colorless, a white and a blue, you get a 2/4. And as Council of the Absolute enters the battlefield, name a card other than a creature or land card. Your opponents can't cast cards with the chosen name. Spells with the chosen name you cast cost 2 less to cast. I guess this is okay. A 2/4 body is just not that exciting, and it's probably going to be pretty rare for the second part, like the reducing the casting cost for you to ever actually matter. I guess it's nice if they have like a couple Grizzly Spectacles or something like that, and you can shut that out. I don't really know how much worth that has, though. I kind of peg this guy as like a 2.5 to 3.
It'd probably be a little lower. I'm probably closer to like a 2. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
Every once in a while it'll do work, but for the most part, it's not really that relevant.
Yeah.
I don't like gate guys.
Sorry, I cut you off. Repeat that.
I said I'd rather have one of the gate guys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we put them in 3.5, right? Like the blue and the black one?
Yeah, 3.5, 3.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this guy's 2.5, 3-ish. All right, Deputy of Acquittals, white and a blue for a 2/2 with flash. And when it enters the battlefield, you can return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So this kind of reminds me of that Planar Chaos White Mane Lion card. It flashes in. This is, I guess, a little bit better since it's a May. You don't have to. You can just play this as a bear if you want. White Mane Lion couldn't really do that. I think with White Mane Lion you had to balance something. And I guess this is a little more awkward to cast than White Mane Lion. This guy's going to save your stuff from removal, just like Dramatic Rescue would. I don't know how relevant a 2/2 body is in the late game, though. I could see this being a 2.5.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. The only thing that I don't like about it is every time I see the bounce effect, I really miss the abilities you could use with the stack.
Yeah. I'm reminded on numerous occasions about how much better the rules used to be before they changed that. What set did they change it? It was
It was right after. No. Was it Morrowind?
It might have been Morrowind. Yeah, I don't remember that. I
I
think
feel like
it
it
was
was
with a
like-
core set, actually. A
I
core
feel like
set.
it was right at the same time they introduced Planeswalkers. But
It was around that time, but if I remember correctly, they changed the rules when a new core set came out, I thought.
could be.
Anyways, yeah, so this guy, I think 2.5 is reasonable. All right, here we have Jellin Sphinx. For 3 colorless, a white and a blue, you get a 1/5 flying vigilance, and whenever it attacks, other attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. A 1/5 body is not that exciting. It does have evasion and vigilance, which is nice, so that makes it a little more attractive. And it has like a reverse. What's the exalted effect? I guess it's like when anything attacks, it gets +1/+1, which is pretty decent. I could see this guy doing some work. I'd give him a 3.
Yeah, I think he's pretty solid. I'd actually give him a little higher and give him a 3.5.
Yeah, I think he'll be, like in terms of the 5 drops you can get. I think this is a pretty reasonable one. Lavinia of the 10th, 3 and a white and a blue for a 4/4 who is pro-red. And when Lavinia of the 10th enters the battlefield, detain each non-land permanent your opponent controls with converted mana cost 4 or less. So you basically get to detain their whole board the turn you play it, likely. If you're on the play, and if you're on the draw, then maybe you miss a card with it. But in general, you get to detain everything. 4/4 for 5 mana is not terrible, and the pro red could occasionally be useful. I'd put this as 3.5 probably.
Yeah, I agree. Probably a 3.5. I mean, I think the pro red might actually be more relevant than we're giving initial credit to, just because there's so many multicolored cards. Yeah,
that's true.
If you think about the way the 3-color guilds break down, most of them are going to have red, like more than half.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think 3.5 is a good place for this card. Okay, render silent. This is white, blue, blue for an instant. Counter target spell. Its controller can't cast spells this turn. Well, this is definitely better than that random 4-mana counter spell, but it kind of reminds me of Counterflux a little bit. Just kind of awkward to cast. I think Psychic Strike's probably just better. I mean, it's a 3-mana counter spell, all said and done. So I guess 2.5, 2.
Probably call it a 2. I mean, it's 2. Sure, it's kind of filler.
Yeah,
it's like a random pair.
I think the second part, its controller can't cast spells this turn, is not always going to be relevant. So yeah, I could see it as a 2. Okay, restore the piece. 1, a white and a blue. Instant, return each creature that dealt damage this turn to its owner's hand. So this is, I guess, kind of like Aetherize, but probably a little better. It's easier to, hide a 3-mana spell from your opponent than a 4-mana one. Each creature that dealt damage this turn to its owner's hand, but it bounces your creatures too, so that's another thing. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting card. I don't really know where to put this. I'm going to say 2, just because it's really awkward with your creatures dealing damage as well.
I'd probably also give it a 2, but I think it's actually strictly worse than Aetherize because they have to do damage first, versus Aetherize is just attacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a 2 is fine for this. It's just very awkward to make this work in your favor.
Yeah.
You have to really
or you take a lot of damage.
Yeah, or you take a lot of damage. This is not a freebie by any means. All right, on with the Dimir cards. Haunter of Nightvale, 3 mana, and then 3 colorless, and then a black and a blue for a 3/4, and it gives all of your opponent's creatures -1, -0. So 3/4 for 5 mana, not that great, but -1, -0 is pretty significant. That can make their combat a lot more difficult. Obviously, not as good as Curse of Death's Hold or whatever that enchantment was that gave everything -1, -1. I'd give this guy 3.
I think he's an easy 3.5. I mean, really? The -1, -0 is it's so relevant, and plus having a body attached to it, it makes it a little more vulnerable than an enchantment. But it's still, I think overall it's still a plus.
Yeah, it seems powerful.
I'd be very happy taking it early.
Yeah, I would too. All right, so now we have Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker. Sounds delicious. 3 mana or 3 colorless, a blue and a black for a 2/4 flyer. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals 4 land cards and then puts those cards into his or her graveyard. So this guy will mill your opponent out pretty fast. He's also a 2/4 flyer for 5, which is fine. The Mind Eye Drake was a 2/5, and it was pretty annoying. I mean, 2/4 is not quite as annoying in terms of difficulty, to remove it, but this guy has a very relevant body attached to a pretty relevant ability. I would give this guy a 3.5.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because if he basically kills them in 3 hits, generally speaking.
I guess it depends on how many lands they have, but roughly 3 to 4 hits.
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 4 hits and they're basically dead. I mean, if you're doing that, then I think it's pretty solid. So I don't know. If there are ways to force him through, I'd tempted to give him a 4.
Yeah.
Just because he kills him pretty quickly and he's a good finisher.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I agree with you. Probably 3.5 is more accurate, though.
I think the reason why I gave him that and not a 4 is because it's kind of like the poison slash infect counters or whatever. It's like a parallel damage path that doesn't advance your other game plan. I mean, I guess this guy does do 2 damage as well, so it's not completely irrelevant when he hits them. But if he was a 3 power guy, he would basically be killing them in 5 hits anyways. So effectively he's like a 3 power flyer in terms of doing damage to their library. A 3/4 is a very good body. I don't know if it's a straight up 4, but yeah, especially I guess he becomes a lot better with other mill effects too that can help close the game out if you can't get him through. All right, we have Notion Thief, 2 colorless, a blue and a black for a 3/1 flash. If an opponent would draw a card, except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. So that was quite the mouthful. So basically, you can use this guy in response to their Thought Flare and live the dream.
Yes. Otherwise, I think he's kind of not playable. I think he'd probably get 2.
Yeah, I agree. There's just not enough draw effects in this format for this guy to be relevant, a good amount of the time. I guess he can, ambush creatures, but it's just not that great ambushing them with a 3/1. Okay, we have Pilfered Plans, colorless, blue and a black, sorcery. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Draw 2 cards. So this is Divination with an upside, but a little more difficult to cast, I guess. Divination's always fine. It's never, super amazing, but card advantage is card advantage. And the mill effect, I guess, could be relevant, but probably won't be. So I would say 3.
Yeah, I think it's very easily a 3. If this format is really, really slow and there are not a lot of ways to gain card advantage, then I could even see it at 3.5.
Yeah, I think the speed of the format will definitely influence how good this card is. But yeah, I've never been unhappy that Divination is in my deck. Okay, Reap Intellect. X colorless, 2 colorless, a blue and a black for a sorcery, and target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose up to X non-land cards from it and exile them. For each card exiled this way, search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. Then that player shuffles his or her library. So this is kind of the wall of text, maybe playable and constructed. I don't think this is super playable. Let's see. I guess you're able to strip their hand, but it's so expensive. You're just, they've likely played most of their spells by the time you cast this. I don't think this is very playable. What do you think?
I'd probably give it a 1.5. If in a control mirror, this is just gonna win you the game.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit above sideboard, but not that much. Warped Physique. For a blue and a black, you get whatever this guy is, and it's an instant. Target creature gets +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This card looks pretty awesome. It's cheap removal, so you can use it in the early game to kill pretty much anything, because you'll have 5 or 6 cards in your hand when you use it on turn 2 or 3 maybe. And later in the game, you can keep a couple lands in your hand to make sure that it's still relevant. So I think it'll be a pretty solid piece of removal for blue-black. I'd give this a 3.5.
Yeah, I'd agree. For all the reasons you said, 3.5 sounds about right. It's very stable. I think it'll be a very stable removal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Woodlot Crawler for a blue and a black. You get a 2/1 insect with Forest Walk and protection from green. What this reminds me of is that card from Planar Chaos, the Duskdale Rider or whatever, the black 1/1. It was pro green, and every time he dealt damage, he got a 1/1 counter or something silly.
Oh, that was actually a reprint.
Was it?
Something Rider.
Yeah.
Or rather, it was a color shifted card. It used to be the green. It used to be green pro black.
Yeah.
And now then it turned into black.
Right. So it was one of the shifted cards.
Yeah. But this more reminds me of Myraboa.
Yep, also reminds me of Myraboa. The obnoxious, you play this and the green player just rolls their eyes and, it just feels like scooping the game. It's just so demoralizing for that to come down on turn 2 if you play green. It's like evasive damage and it just like a complete stonewall, for their ground creatures. In terms of how good this guy actually is, I mean, I think like you said earlier with a pro red creature, I think protection from colors will in general be better in a format where everyone's playing 3 colors usually. So I'd say this guy's probably a solid 3. Yeah, I'd put him at 3.
Yeah, I'd probably take him and be pretty happy.
Yeah. Okay, Blood Baron of Vizcapa, starting off with the Orzhav cards with a bang. 3 colorless, a white and a black for a 4/4, who has lifelink, protection from white, and protection from black. And as long as you have 30 or more life and an opponent has 10 or less life, Blood Baron of Vizcapa gets +6/+6, has flying, and your opponent cries tears. This guy looks pretty absurd to me. I'd say solid 4, if not maybe 4.5, but probably solid 4.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4.5. I mean, this is going to be pretty easily a first pick.
Yeah.
That being said, I think his second ability is kind of a win more ability.
Right.
It's not strictly necessary. If you have 30 life and your opponent's down to 10 and he's in play,
right,
you're probably doing all right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The fact that he has double, protection from white and black, like, like we've said several times now, like people are going to be playing a lot of colors. Like he's just going to be really tough to deal with. Red, that kind of just leaves red as like the one color with like hard removal to get rid of him. And there aren't too many red spells that do 4 damage to a creature. So yeah, this guy's going to be pretty obnoxious if your opponent gets him. All right, here we have Debt to the Deathless, X colorless, white, black for a sorcery. And each opponent loses 2 times X life. You gain life equal to this way. The art on this card is pretty awesome. Just as an aside, very detailed, kind of creepy looking. So let's see. I guess this is like a pseudo lava axe or something. So you have to invest 4. So if you have like 6 mana, you're only doing 2. If you have like 8 mana, you're doing 4. That's just not that much. I don't see this card as being super playable. You need a lot of mana to make this work. I guess maybe if you get a Cryptghast later, then it's better, but you get this card before Cryptghast, so you can't really, pick it with that in mind. So yeah, I give this a 1.5.
Well, your math was slightly off there.
Was
if you
it?
have 6,
Sorry,
mana,
2 times the life. Yeah. I misread.
So it's slightly better than that. I still, I don't know. In an Orzhav deck, not that there are necessarily going to be Orzhav decks, but I could see it actually being a fairly solid finisher.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of stall, and then burn them.
Right.
And at 8 mana, you're actually doing 8 damage, which is pretty relevant.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't take it early, but I think it's actually a pretty solid finisher.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I misread that it's 2 times the amount. I'd bump it up to 2.
Probably 2.5.
I'll give it a 2. I'm wary about playing cards that just like do nothing until turn 8 or 9.
Fair.
And that's assuming you draw lands the whole time. It just seems to be asking a lot to me. Like, you need 8 or 9 lands to really make this effective, and you have to like survive that whole time. This doesn't help you get there at all. So
yeah, okay, granted, probably closer to 2 or 1.5. You're right.
Yeah. All right, here we have Maw of the Obsidat. 3 colorless, a white and a black for a 3/3. Sacrifice a creature. Creatures you can control get +1/+1 until end of turn. I guess this could have some interesting synergies with Selesnya. I have a feeling that whatever we give this card, we're going to be wrong. Just because like this guy seems like he could enable a lot of like weird, very powerful plays. I'll give him a 3.
Yeah, I think he's a solid creature. He's gonna do a lot of work. In the right deck, he's gonna be amazing.
Right.
In a different deck, he'll just be mediocre.
Right.
But active treason protection and also active treason abuse is always fun.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I guess he's a decent splash in Boros too. Here we have Obsidat's Aid, 3 colorless, a white and a black for a sorcery. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is interesting. I don't think this will, really ever be like stone cold unplayable. Like it has a very relevant effect. If you have good cards in your deck, you can get them back. And if you have good cards in your deck and they're not in your graveyard, then hopefully they're in play. I'd give this 2.5. I don't know if I'd take it early. I think 2.5 is fair.
I don't know. I think in the slow format, I think this is actually going to be really powerful.
Okay.
And I think there's going to be a lot of unconditional removal, and the ability to bring
That's
things to recur your biggest threat in the late
Yeah.
game. I think is being pretty important. I'd actually give this a 3.5 and take it pretty
Huh.
early.
Interesting. I think it's something, as you said, that it comes like right onto the battlefield. Like you don't have to mess around with bringing it back to your hand. Like this type of card usually makes you do. So maybe it's better than I give it credit for. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll see. All right, Sin Collector, 1 white and a black for a 2/1. And when he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand, and you choose an instant or sorcery card from it and exile that card. Interesting. So he's kind of like a mini version of Vizcapot Confessor. Not having Extort is disappointing, but that would probably make this card too good. Yeah, obviously against a control mirror, he's going to be very solid, and even probably against like an aggressive deck, you might get to pull a trick out of their hand and then trade for one of their cards. So I'd give this guy a 3. I don't know if he's quite to 3.5. He's going to miss some of the time. Is the problem. And the cards like the 4 mana guys, that like draw you a card or give something -2, -2. That's like an always hit. You know what I mean? Like when you cast him, or you can control it to like always hit. And this guy's a maybe, so I'll give him a 3.
I don't know. I think I'm pretty excited about him. I mean, again, I'm looking at this and thinking it's going to be a pretty slow format. Meaning, if you can play him on turn 3 or 4, and just basically be pretty confident that your bomb is going to stick, then I think you're in a really good position.
That's true.
I'd probably actually take him a little earlier than that and put him as 3.5.
3.5. You're probably right. Now that you mentioned about like protecting your cards and making sure that you're free from threats, I think that is relevant. All right, Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, 5 mana, a white and a black for a 4/4, and gives it's a creature with vigilance and protection from creatures. Which, if you've ever stuck a Holy Mantle, you know how absurd that is. And whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature and put a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. I think this will be the Gruul Rage Beast of Dragon's Maze. It's like that 7 mana, absurd bomb that if you stick it, they're just completely hosed. And like they basically have to like remove it that turn, or you just win the game. Granted, it is 7 mana, and that is expensive, but this is a slow format. I'd give this. I want to give it a 4. It's so powerful. What do you think?
I'd definitely give it a 4.
Yeah.
The problem, like, since it has, what should we call this effect? There was a Planeswalker that had this effect, right?
Oh, you're talking about Vraska.
Yeah, it has the Vraska effect kind of built into it.
Yeah.
Then the inherent downside of it is it has to deal damage to you first, which means they can, if they have an evasive deck, just power through it.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem, or the biggest downside I see about this card. Yes, it has an impact when it hits the turn, it hits the board, but they can still kill you through it. So if you're using this as a way to stabilize, it's not going to work.
Yeah, not always. Even if they don't have evasion, they might just have like huge creatures that can get through for enough damage to kill you. By turn 7, like you're not going to be at 20 life typically. But just the fact that it has vigilance and pro creatures, like it's bashing for 4 every turn that like they just can't block, and it's basically preventing anything from getting through that doesn't have evasion. Barring like an Alpha Strike or something.
Right.
Pretty absurd. Yeah, I think it's a solid 4. All right, so here we have Tithe Drinker, white and a black for a 2/1 lifelink, and that has Extort. I'm all about this card. This card looks awesome. Although I might have my Gatecrash goggles on right now, where like I see a 2/2 with Extort, or a 2-drop with Extort, and I go bonanza. But this is a 2/1 with lifelink, which is pretty relevant, period. And you give it Extort, and we've seen like how awesome Extort is, both in like like the slow grindy games, and just even in the Gatecrash environment, which is fast. Now we're going to a slower environment. Like I think this card's going to be a powerhouse. I put this as a 3.5.
I'd probably call it a 3. I mean, it is very good. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, but like if I'm looking at, I would be disappointed to open this and take this first pick.
Really?
Yes.
I was never disappointed to take Syndic of Ties first. Were you?
I wasn't in Gatecrash again. It was a much more aggressive format than I'm expecting.
That's true.
And this draws parallels to the 2/1 lifelink vampire from the core sets. and that was not where you wanted to be first pick. Granted, it has extort in this as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that it has extra, like, this is going to be relevant like the whole game.
It'll be relevant. I just don't think it's amazing. I think it's a very solid 3.
Yeah. I see. Wait, what did we give Sin Collector? Did we give that a 3.5?
I think I gave it a 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you think Sin Collector is better than this?
Yes.
Interesting. I'd say they're pretty close.
I think Sin Collector is much better because again, I think the format's going to revolve around bombs. Not around kind of edging them out.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's my Gatecrash goggles. This card looks really good right now.